So I can outthrow an Olympic champion, granted from 1912. A lot has changed since then. Discus throwing has evolved in the last 110 years into something they probably wouldn't even be able to recognize, especially if we go back all the way to the Greek days. But probably a lot of you are saying, what even is discus throwing? This is a discus for college men. It's a 4.5 pound piece of metal, basically. The goal is to stand in an 8-foot circle and throw it as far as you can. From the side, it's going to be turning, we'll say counterclockwise for a right-handed thrower. It's going to fly a lot like a wing, so same principles that apply to an airplane wing will apply a lot to a discus, and it's kind of what I'm going to be talking about today. I've been throwing discus for 9 years now. Discus throwers are going to employ a lot of useful physics to help them throw further and more consistently. Today I just want to talk about one of those in gyroscopic precession. Much like our other friend, I have a video that I won't play because this is a PDF. But so typically, if we were looking at something like a circle, if we push on the, let's see, it's y'all's right side, it's going to go to the right. When an object's spinning, much like it would have done in this video, pushing in the right will cause that force to manifest 90 degrees later in our rotation. So force here would make the front go down. This is seen a lot in aircraft as well. So if you're talking about a helicopter, the reason they have that rotor blade in the back is to help them pitch, because you have a big thing spinning at the top. Any force side to side will cause it to pitch up and down. So Andreas Maheras in his research found that a discus is going about 4 to 8 meters or revolutions per second, so it is moving pretty quick. It is a rotating body. And there's going to be two main forces during the flight of the discus that are going to affect it. The first one I want to talk about is lift. So, like I was saying, it is kind of like a plane wing. You are going to have some sort of a lift component underneath the discus, and that's going to be applied through a point called the center of pressure. So it's pretty normal to think of a center of gravity, center of mass, which would be this black circle here. The center of pressure would be something around A. So that's where your lift will be. So you're going to have a force in the front of the discus, which because of gyroscopic precession will show up 90 degrees later in our rotation. So if we look at this other diagram here, B, force would be up will come out of the page in E, right? So that's going to end up showing up in our discus flight as a rolling motion. So if we're watching from the back of the discus flight, it's going to roll about 10 degrees a second to clockwise. Another force we're going to have in a discus is based off of the relative velocity differences underneath our discus. So we're rotating clockwise and we're moving forwards. This side of the discus will be going counter to the direction of wind, whereas this side is going with the direction of wind. The difference in velocities creates something like a Magnus effect, like you'd see in a curveball in baseball, right? So you're going to have a higher pressure on this side, a lower pressure on this side, causing discus to have a net force on this swing, meaning you're going to manifest that in the front of the discus, causing eventually a pitching about 1.5 degrees a second, until at least you reach an aerodynamic stall condition. But that's a little too unimportant. So just to kind of summarize that, as we throw, we're going to have a rolling motion and a pitching motion, kind of up and a roll. It moves in the air. It's pretty cool. Good news is we have ways to kind of counteract these effects in the wind. The first of those is going to be kind of what discus we actually throw. So there's a thing when selecting discus is called rim weight, and that all discuses are going to be the same size, they're going to be the same weight of 2 kilos or 4.5 pounds, but the percentage of weight in our rim versus our center are going to be different. So you can purchase things all the way down from like a 50% rim weight up to your really expensive ones are going to be up almost around 85%, 90%. And that's important because of rotational inertia. The more amount of mass in our outside, it's able to hold more energy, and it mitigates the effects of a lot of the things I've talked about today. Another thing we can change is just change how we throw. So there's an item called tilt angle and then attack angle, kind of seen here. So this is from the side, so we can change our attack angle, which is relevant to the release angle here on this line, and the release angle here, and the angle of the actual discus itself. So if we're expecting discus to pitch up, we can kind of already give it a little bit down, and that'll help it have a better flight throughout all of its flight. Same thing with tilt angle. If we're expecting a rolling motion, we can already have it at about a 54 degree angle, and that'll give it better lift characteristics through the majority of its flight. Just kind of the main goal here. That's it. there's some interesting nuance as far as like how we actually throw a discus that aren't related to these things I've talked about today, but this is just part of it. But discus throwing is more than just strength. It's a really beautiful sport. It involves a lot of technique and a lot of other things. In flight, it's good to think about the effects of wind and gyroscopic precession, and by understanding the physics, we're able to throw further and more consistently, and hopefully you can maybe apply something to your own sports. Thanks.